want to tell you a funny story. It was about a guy who inherited an elephant and didn't know what to do with this elephant. And so he went to the library and read up on elephants. And he read that an elephant will never take its 4 feet off the ground at the same time. It'll take its 2 feet or 3 feet, but it'll never take 4 feet off the ground at the same time. So thought about it, you know what, maybe I can make some money with this. So he went down to the park and he set up a little sign and he said, you know, I'll give $1,000 to anybody that can make this elephant take all 4 feet off the ground, and you can try to do that, and, you know, it costs $1 for a ticket. And so he thought, you know, I'm going to be okay with this. And people just came, everybody thought, oh, I'm somehow or another, I can teach this elephant to do that. And all kinds of people came, and he's just making money, everybody's giving him $1. And no one's doing anything. Hey, I've really figured something out. You know, I'm going to go take this on the road. And, well, at the end of the day, a little boy came up. And all he had with him was a big baseball bat. And he asked the guy, can I try? He said, well, of course. He took his $1. And the little boy went up to the elephant, looked him right in the eyes. Very quiet, went back behind the elephant. Got his baseball bat. Bam! And that elephant screamed and boom! Jumped up in the air, all 4 feet, clearly off the ground, and the poor elephant crying in midair. At some point it landed again, and nobody really knew what to do about that. Man was all upset. Oh man, I lost all this money. I didn't make any money. What am I going to do now? Well, he goes back to the library. He finds out there's something about an elephant in its neck, that an elephant will never nod its head or shake its head. That's interesting. You know, they kind of twist their head. They don't go up and down or sideways. Well, let's try this one more time. It worked, you know, and what are the chances? So he goes down, sets the whole thing up, and again, people paying dollars, everybody's doing everything they can. You know, they got the little balls flying back and forth and lights, trying to make this elephant turn his head. Wouldn't do it. End of the day, the little boy comes in. All the boy has this time is a stepladder. Little boy goes right up to the elephant, looks the elephant in the eye, and he asks the elephant, you remember me? The elephant, want me to do it again? Oh, very good. Well, if there's anybody wondering what our new series is about, I would recommend an optometrist. You'd be able to see that. You know, it's not easy figuring out the Christian life. It really is not. It's a lifelong process. It's very simple, but very difficult to implement, very difficult to practice. When I was a little kid, I remember this. I would have been like third grade, fourth grade at the most. I remember asking my dad, or making a comment to my dad. I said, Dad, you know what we should do is we should read the Bible, and then we should write out everything we're supposed to do. That way we have a list, and we'll know what we should do, what we shouldn't do. I was in the fourth grade. Why was I thinking like that? Because I really did want to be a Christian, but I didn't understand the bigger picture. My dad was very kind and tried to explain. You know, all I remember is he was very kind to me. I don't remember how his answer was, but basically, no, that's not how it works. But we kind of like that, tell me what to do. You know, it's like the old Simon Says game, where you know, a bunch of kids line up and one kid in front, you know, Simon says, lift your leg. You know, everybody lifts their leg. Simon says, hop around. Everybody hops around. Simon says, sit down. Everybody sits down. Get up. You know, and then, oh, he didn't say Simon Says, you're out of the game. And, you know, and sometimes our Christian life gets to be like that. Well, what is Jesus telling me to do? Because that's what I've got to go do now. Whatever it is. But let me tell you something about that. When the Christian life is about to doing, it gets exhausting. And it gets discouraging. Because there's always leads you up to a point where you don't do it. Where you fail. And now the issue is, now what do I do? Do I just forget it? Or do I start over again? Or I keep hitting this same one over and over, and I can't get past this habit, or attitude. And it's just a discouragement kind of a thing. And then we see that that's what the whole Old Testament was the rules and the laws and the do this and the do that. But we're supposed to be in a whole different age. We're supposed to be in the age of Christ where things are not like that. But why is it that we keep falling back into that? Well, this is what I've got to do. This is what I've got to be. And have frustration like that. It doesn't help us live a good life or a life that overcomes temptation. It's kind of like if you were to be married and you were to go buy every book on how to have a great marriage, and then you were to make a list of everything all those books said. You'd have a long list. And so every day you wake up, okay, what's the next thing I've got to do to have a great marriage? And you'd go do that. And would you have a great marriage? No, your spouse would want to kill you because all you're doing is just going, following the rules, doing what they say. A marriage is not about rules. A marriage is about love. People want to know, do you love me? Do you care about me? Forget the rules. I don't care about it. Do you? It's not about, well, of course I do. Didn't I do this? Didn't I go buy flowers? Didn't I, make a Valentine's getaway? Didn't I? No, that's not the answer to a happy marriage. The answer to a happy marriage is a good relationship. And that's what we see in the Bible. But we lose track of that in our lives, don't we? No wonder is when kids get out of high school that they stop going to church. Because a lot of that is not about the relationship. It's about I'm just tired. I can't do it. Or why do I need to go to church? I know what the rules are. I can live a good life. Or they get out of college and then it's really a long time if ever they start coming back to church. Or when they get married and, okay, we're going to start going to church now. They have a kid. Oh, I'm going to start going to church. But then after a period of time, it's, oh, you know what? There's so much going on. There's so much to do. I know what I want to hear on Sunday. Let's just not go this Sunday. Before you know it, right? And that's the irony of it. That's the irony, that Jesus represents something completely different from that, and we come in and want to picture it like that. And that's not Christianity at all. Christianity, all the way through, the driving force is not a list of regulations or rules. It's a living relationship with Jesus. And what Jesus did is Jesus came to lay the groundwork for a new kind of relationship with God. That's what Jesus is here to do, lay a new groundwork. Now, so Jesus came in when there was all about rules, and it was rules, crazy rules. And Jesus comes in and speaks of God in a completely new way that nobody ever thought of God. And this is what he starts. He starts off talking about how God is like a father and we are like children. Now, isn't that common for us? But did you know that Jesus was the first one to present God as a father figure? There's nowhere in the Old Testament. But it's in the New Testament, Jesus refers to God as a heavenly, loving, caring, doting father. The father-child relationship. Jesus talked about the relationship with God being about a branch and a vine. So it's not the vine that sets the direction for the branch. It's not the branch that sets the direction for the vine. It's the vine that supplies everything to the branch that gives the fruit. He talked about it in terms of sheep and a shepherd. And we don't like the sheep and shepherd idea sometimes because the sheep are really dumb. They're very stubborn. Sheep will do stuff that will get them killed. And so they need a shepherd to come alongside them to protect them and to guide them, keep them from harming themselves. But he used another illustration far more than he did these. Another word that relates to all of us. There we go. Follow. That's what it's about. He used this all the way through. And we see, very interestingly, a great little story here in Matthew chapter 9 about Matthew. And this is what happens. Now, we read Matthew as a man in the Bible, and we got to think, oh, greatest guy in the world. Oh, no, not so quick. Not the greatest guy in the world. When Jesus meets Matthew, he was a horrible man, the scum of the earth kind of a guy. A terrible person that nobody would have anything to do with. I was trying to think, in today's age, what is the scum of the earth, a horrible person that nobody wants to have anything to do with? Well, politician. But besides a politician, what do we have? We have maybe a repeat offender, old guy that hangs out at the junior high trying to sell drugs to children. Now, wouldn't that be about as bad as it gets? Anybody, whoever that was, should go find him and beat him up, right? That's a terrible person. Matthew was viewed in his community as being such a person. Why is that? Because Matthew was a tax collector. Well, it's a job. It's a federal job. No, it wasn't a federal job like we have. It's not like the tax assessor that we have in our county, Santa Clara. No, it's very different. This is what they did. Every 5 years, the Roman government would send out to bid on the taxes. And it would say, hey, who out there can raise the most taxes for us? And that was the process. And so the more you could raise, the more money you made, but the less money the population had. And so they would come into a community and they found people who were already powerful, who had a lot of authority in the community. We imagine Matthew must have come from a very well-off family, a lot of influence, a lot of network, and they would have bid on the right to tax the people. And the people hated it. Can you imagine? Every 5 years, these people get together and they say, how much can I squeeze out of this guy? Well, you don't have to imagine, we do that every 4 years, don't we? But in those days, it was every 5 years that they tried to figure that out. That was Matthew. So when Jesus came to Matthew, saw him sitting on the side of a lake there, at his little table, collecting money, finding out who needs to pay him more money, Jesus goes up to him. And this is where we find Matthew chapter 9, verse 9. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. And Jesus goes up to him and says something to him. What would Jesus say to Matthew? I imagine Jesus would say something like, wouldn't your mother be proud? Or something along those lines, right? But he doesn't. He doesn't say that. This is what he says. Follow me. And Matthew got up and followed him. This is not what anybody wanted to hear Jesus say to Matthew. It was the last thing. Jesus was already an important person at this point. Jesus had already given the Sermon on the Mount. He had already done all kinds of healings. He had already called all kinds of disciples. He was well on his way. This is very late in the story of Jesus. And here comes Matthew. And this is a chance for Jesus to show his repulsion at such a terrible man. But instead, what Jesus does is he befriends Matthew. He doesn't put a condition on Matthew. He doesn't say, Matthew, let me tell you what, if you take all the money you're making, you give it back to the people it belongs to, if you stop being, the tax collector and taking advantage of everybody for your own riches and our oppression. No, he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that at all. He lets Matthew be Matthew as Matthew is. As Matthew appears on the scene, Matthew gets to be. And Jesus talks to Matthew, not a new Matthew, not a changed Matthew, but the scum bucket Matthew, that one. And he says, Matthew, follow me. What is up with that? Well, you tell you what, everybody gets mad at Jesus now. Because all of a sudden, Jesus, by accepting Matthew, he's saying, I like these kinds of people. And the other people are saying, wait a minute. So wait. The friend of my enemy is my enemy. My enemy's enemy is my friend. Matthew is our enemy. Jesus is making friends with him. Jesus must be our enemy. What on earth is going on here, Jesus? So Jesus takes it to another level. It's going to get worse. Matthew chapter 9, verse 10. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house. So now he's buddy-buddy. And look who goes to Matthew's house for dinner. Nice people? Oh, no, no, no. Not nice people at all. Nay, nay. Many tax collectors, as if one tax collector isn't bad enough, he brings many tax collectors for dinner. Tax collectors and sinners came and ate with Jesus and his disciples. Meanwhile, there's people on the outside looking in saying, what is Jesus doing? He must be out of his mind. He is not the man I thought he was. He is not the teacher we thought he was. He's all talk. Look at his life. Look what he accepts. He has no standards, no morals. What is wrong with him? He should be eating with us. Right? Kind of like when you're back in high school and they have the cafeteria and they have all the different tables and all the little cliques. It really matters where you sit, where you can sit, where you're going to be accepted, where you're going to be rejected from. That's what we've got going here. Jesus sits at the table that nobody wants to go to. And Jesus is sitting there saying, hey, I've got a new family here. This is for me. And his disciples, in verse 11, when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? Meaning, he could eat with us. He used to be able to eat with us, but no more. He's chosen to go down a bad road. On hearing this, verse 12, Jesus said, now listen to this. This is what Jesus is saying to the religious leaders. It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. Ooh, okay, Jesus. That makes sense. And all of a sudden, I think Jesus makes some peace with the people on the outside saying, you know what? They're sick. I'm here as a doctor, as a help to them. But at the same time, you got Matthew and the other tax collectors and sinners, and they hear this and they're, oh yeah, that sounds really good. Wait a minute. What do you mean to the sick? We're sick? Who are you calling sick? And all of a sudden, now he's got these guys on the inside saying, hey, what's going on here? And so Jesus turns around to the Pharisees, to the religious leaders. And he tells us something very interesting in verse 13. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. And so what Jesus tells you and what he tells me is verse 13. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. What does that mean? How do we understand I desire mercy, not sacrifice? Because it's the sacrifice that we're really good at. It's easy for us to do the things that help us be a part of the in-group or get the agreement of the crowd that we approve of, who we admire, the people we want to be more like. We get into that world and we want them to think, yeah, this guy's on our team. Yeah, I'll make the sacrifices I need to make and how I look and how I dress and how I spend my money and where we go on vacation. I'll do all that to be a part of that. That's easy. But Jesus doesn't ask us for sacrifice. In Hosea chapter 6, verse 6, it's not about sacrifice. It's about showing mercy. In God's world, it's not about fitting in. It's about showing mercy to those who are left out, to those who are rejected. Man, I love that idea. You know, one of the hardest things for Christians is this attitude of being right. Christians, people everywhere, not just Christians, but people everywhere, but Christians included, love to be right. And that's why we get into all these arguments about, is the Bible right? Is the Bible wrong? What about this? What about that? All these things. Because we want to just be right, and we just flood too much right, and we rush to it. Hold on to that. Say, see, I'm right. You're wrong. I've got this to prove. Blah, blah, blah. We love that. Why? Because it just builds who we are. It builds what we are. Even in our own relationships. People get into fights with each other. Why? Because I'm right. Because you're wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to list out the ways that you're wrong. And I'm going to list out the ways that I'm right. And the other person's doing the exact same things. And battle, 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 battle. Because it's so important to be right in the life of somebody who doesn't understand what it means to be a follower of Jesus. being right is good. You got to be right, right? But at the same time, being right is not enough. You also have to be like Jesus. And what does that mean? You have to be kind. You have to be merciful. You've got to keep your mouth shut at the right times. You've got to let other people have their own stand, keep their own sense of respect. You've got to be able to let them be who they're going to be. Out of kindness, out of respect, out of appreciation, without this insistence on you being right and them knowing and admitting that you're right, which they never do, but you insist that they would. It's not enough to be right. We also have to be like Jesus. Let me tell you something. It's much easier to be right than it is to be like Jesus. Much easier. I think any of us would rather be right than to be like Jesus. But we are called, as followers, to be like Jesus. If we're right, good. The most important thing for us is to be like Jesus. Why is that? Because just as the religious leaders are outside of Matthew's house, where is Jesus? He's inside the house with the tax collectors and the sinners. That's where Jesus is. Hello? Hello, people. Where's Jesus? He's in that room, in that house that you don't want to go in because you don't like those people. He's in there being merciful. He's in there being kind. He's being in there wanting them, accepting them, inviting them to come be with him. That's where Jesus is. And where are the religious leaders? They're on the outside criticizing what's going on in the inside. Let me ask you, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be? Outside the house? Or do you want to be inside the house where you are welcoming and wanting and accepting and loving and helping and healing and ministering and leading and guiding, building a relationship with them? Who's building the relationship? Not the religious leaders, not the know-it-alls, not the people who are right. Not them. No, it's Jesus. Going in there, building the relationship, showing mercy, showing kindness, showing acceptance. That's where Jesus is inside. That's where Jesus, that in my mind, that is so important. That is so important. What? For us as a church. It really matters for us as a church, in our community that we are. That we not have this mentality that we are right, this is the way we are, and if you want to come be a part of us, then you better be right too. Let's see how you change to be right, to be accepted by us. We will set the standard of what you believe, or what you worship, or whatever you do with your life. We will set the standard, and we will let you know when you have reached it, and when you have, we will reward you by allowing you to come in. How unlike Jesus could you ever be? How does the church even get to be called a Christian church if that's the attitude, when right here in our Bible it's completely different? Look at right here. People, this is what people do. This is people call out, change and you can join us. But this is what Jesus says. Join us and you will change. That's what Jesus says. It's completely different than how the world does it. Completely different. This is the Christian way to follow Jesus. Is to reach out and say, hey, you can come in. Now there's three things that we can learn about Jesus' invitation to follow him. Three things. Number one, being a sinner does not disqualify you. Say, what? Being a sinner does not disqualify you from being a follower of Jesus. But how do you figure that? Look at Jesus in Matthew. Was Matthew a sinner? Yes, the worst kind of sinner. Was he a follower? Yes. Jesus invited him to come follow him. Jesus went to Matthew's house, building a relationship, calling him, before Matthew ever repented of his sins. Let me tell you something. Not only does sin not disqualify you from being a follower of Jesus, in fact, it's a prerequisite for being a follower of Jesus. Nobody is a follower of Jesus who isn't first a sinner, who doesn't first recognize and realize who they truly are. That is, if you're not a sinner, if you're not one of those, then you do not understand what it means to follow Jesus. relationship and understanding and the choices that they've made, that's just who they are. That does not mean that God has not called them and invited them to be a follower and them coming to take those initial steps. It's at that place that, well, here we go. The second thing, being an unbeliever does not disqualify you. How? What on earth is the pastor saying? That's crazy. We need another pastor. How does an unbeliever, how can an unbeliever be a follower of Jesus? Well, read your Bibles, and you will notice that it wasn't until very, very late in Jesus' ministry that he starts to now say, oh, okay, now you guys believe. Now you believe? What have they been doing all these other years that they were following Jesus? I'll tell you what they were doing. They were not believing. They were doubting. They were second-guessing. They were being protective. I'm just not so sure about this Jesus guy. I don't know if this is going to be okay or not. That's what they were doing. They would have a famous one. But the most famous one is a guy named Thomas. Doubting Thomas. How did he get that name? How did he? Because he was an unbeliever. He did not believe. Doubting Thomas. That's how he got that name. It wasn't until the very... In fact, it was so extreme that Jesus himself told Doubting Thomas, you believe because you see me. Not a whole lot of applause for that. You know what? Blessed are those who will believe even though they don't see me. That's us. That's the rest of us. Let me tell you a secret. You don't have to look too far around you before you're going to see somebody who's having some trouble, having some real doubts about God, what's happening on in their lives. That's a part of the Christian life. That's a part of following Jesus. That doubt is something that's natural, something that comes in there. It's just part of it. And number three, the invitation to follow is an invitation to relationship. The invitation to follow is an invitation to relationship. When Jesus called Matthew to follow him, it wasn't Matthew, start following my rules, buy this franchise, dress like... It wasn't that at all. It was Matthew, have a friendship with me. Have a relationship with me. That's what it was about. A call to follow is a call for relationship with you and me as we follow Jesus. We got to remember, it's not about all the stuff. It's not about my victories or my failures, my embarrassing defeats, my shamefulness, all the stuff that impresses other people. It's not that at all. It's all narrow, focused right down into, Lord, how are we doing? How's our relationship? How are we? Are we close? Are we enjoying each other's company? Are we spending time with each other? Am I growing in my love and admiration for Jesus as who he is as a person, as a personal Savior for me? It's a personal relationship, much more intense than even marriage is. It's a personal relationship. That's what we talk about, the living Jesus. You can't have a personal relationship with a historical figure that died 2,000 years ago, people. But you can if it's real and true and alive. And that's who Jesus is to us. You begin that. And where that relationship begins might not be with Jesus. Maybe that relationship begins in a church with people who are followers of Jesus. Maybe that's where the relationship begins. But you guys, how often has somebody come in and said, you know what, I'd like to explore this. I'm kind of curious. I have some questions. And they come in and they want to have a relationship with us, but we are very quick to say, but you're not one of us. I'm so sorry. Right? You still do these things. You still do those things. What on earth is up with that? As a church, we are Jesus going into Matthew's house. Matthew's house. Not in the church, not in the synagogue. In Matthew's house. And we are there to say, hey, my name's Greg. What's your name? Want to go to the Super Bowl with me? Have another ticket. I was going to sell up for $20,000, but I'll give it to you. It's that relationship thing. It's the friendship thing. That's what it is. We don't need people be Christians before they be a part of our church, before they be a part of the in-group and be an area. No, you don't have to be. You don't have to be. You can be another religion. It's about us accepting and loving and bringing people in. Because guess what? We're not the ones that are going to make a difference in their lives. Never, ever, ever. The only one that's going to make a difference in their lives is Jesus. And unless we invite them in and show them our relationship with Jesus, they're never going to see it. But once they begin to see Jesus, once they begin to see Jesus, even it is by our poor example of what a relationship is like with you, once they themselves see Jesus for themselves and who God is to them, not what we taught them, but who God reveals himself to them as, when that happens, when they begin to follow Jesus, you know what? It's at that moment that they're going to start to believe. When they follow Jesus, it's at that moment that they're going to start to be changed. That's how we're changed, is by our relationship with Jesus. When they start to follow Jesus, it's at that moment that they're going to be able to see themselves and their world very differently. That's what it comes down to. I like Romans chapter 2, verse 4. Because when it talks about how it's God's kindness that leads to repentance. God's kindness. Not God's rightness. Not God's law. Not God's strict rules. And this is good, this is... No, no, no. It's God's kindness that leads to repentance. How many times have we seen that played over and over and over? We repel people when we tell them this is right, this is wrong, this we got to do, this is what you don't got to do. No, they run far away. And Jesus, quit scaring away my guests. Can you imagine? Good thing Jesus doesn't have arms and legs, because he would chase after you and beat you. Don't treat my guests like that. I invited them here. What's wrong with you? Bam! Isn't that right? Thank you, Lord, for not having a physical body. You're all beaten up with red and black and blue. But that's where it's at. It's with kindness. It's with kindness. That's what leads people to repentance. I mean, have you wasted any of your life trying to have somebody change their behavior by you punishing them or teaching them a lesson or so on? How well does that work for you? Right? It doesn't at all. And it doesn't work in the church either. It doesn't work in God's family at all. At all, at all, at all. It's kindness, it's mercy, it's acceptance, it's understanding, it's bringing people in a relationship with you so that they can see your relationship with Jesus and what changes. Let me tell you what, as I follow Jesus, it forces me to keep my eyes on him. And boy, he is quick. It seems like he's always trying to ditch me. Where are you now, Jesus? Okay, here we go over here, there we go over there. You got to be quick to follow Jesus. But every once in a while, what happens is somebody's coming up behind you. And what you do is you turn around and say, who's following, right? Oh, it's you. And then you say, wait a minute. You're not doing it right. I'm ahead of you, so I'm now telling you what you should be doing, right? We do that. So we turn around and we try to tell them, you're not doing this, or you're not doing that, or you need to do. But what happened is we turned around, and now we're not following Jesus anymore. We've turned around and we're telling them. So now what we've become is an obstruction, a barrier to them following Jesus. We're standing out, don't look at Jesus anymore. Look back at me. Hello, let me get your attention. Look at me, don't look at Jesus anymore. What on earth? But that's the game we play, isn't it? And the key here is for us to keep our focus constantly on Jesus. And you know what? The more I keep my eyes on Jesus, and the more I see people around me, and I don't care where they are in their spiritual journey, you know what my heart's saying? You know what? We're struggling with the same things. Yeah, I've been through some of the stuff you've been through. Let me tell you what, I don't know if I'm any better at it. Okay, God's grace has just really been a good help to me. He saved me from a lot. I've got a better life now, but not as I deserve. And I got a whole lot to learn. And that's really that when you look to Jesus, and you quit comparing yourself, judging other people, you put your eyes on Jesus. Man, why have you come up short? And that's where you should come up short, is comparing to Jesus. And that's what we should be walking as we run to, is to Jesus. Here, I'm going to close with this. At the end of the day, the question is not, how much do you know about Jesus? Or where you are in the journey with Jesus? It's rather, and this is the only question that matters, are you following? Are you following? Imagine Matthew. Matthew had no idea what Jesus had in store for him. Matthew thought Jesus was all this important guy, super popular at the height of his career. Oh yeah, look, he wants me to come in. I wonder why. Maybe he knows I have a lot of money. Maybe he knows I have a lot of power. Maybe that's why he wants me in there. He gets in there and his life is completely changed. Not because Jesus gave him a to-do book. No, because Jesus gave up himself, his relationship, his life to Matthew. And that's what changed Matthew. Little did he know he's going to go on to author one of the most widely read books in the history of the world. Oh, Matthew. Matthew's got an amazing story. Jesus comes to us the same way. We have no idea. We have all these little doubts, all these second guesses. But when the Lord comes to you, you have no idea. No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has seen. God's prepared for those who love him. Boy. And so here's what I want you guys to walk away with. Tomorrow morning, start your day with this prayer. Lord, where you lead, I will follow. Very simple, right? Lord, where you lead, I will follow. Lord, what is it that you have for me today? Let me see it from your perspective. Let me understand it. Let me take it your way. Know that you